compared to companies that focus on short-term profits and make decisions on the bottom line, sustainable companies think long-term. In other words, they create long-term financial value. They forge strong relationships with employees and members of the community. They know all their actions affect the environment and work actively to reduce their impact. They care about their employers, their employees, their customers, the communities, and in so doing, work to make a positive social impact. And they understand that all these three elements are intimately connected to each other. Most businesses hope to become sustainable, but reaching that goal is problematic. The road to the finish is filled with obstacles such as inadequate ad hoc policy, burdensome bureaucracy, and reporting, and in Nigeria, lack of electricity supply. Here are a couple of initiatives which may enable company leaders to shape a future that is more sustainable. And we all know them. Leadership. A leader must be able to lead ahead of his contemporaries. He must live ahead of his time. He must live above his circumstances. There will be challenges, but he should strive to surmount them all. He must live deeper than his calamities. Sometimes when a company is gaining traction in a project or endeavor, things could suddenly go wrong. But the leader must overcome the problem. And the leader must live beyond his capabilities. He must dream big, develop leadership skills, and strive to soar beyond his own personal gifts. Very few companies are born with broad-based commitments to sustainability. In order to develop one, companies need leadership commitment. When leadership commitment drives the process, it usually comes from the personal resolution of a CEO to create a more sustainable company. Top-level executives should have the ability to create an enterprise-wide vision, and the clout to see that it is all realized. They have an unmistakable direction in mind and know that their goals will not be achieved overnight. And in pursuing their vision, they are more willing than leaders of traditional companies to tolerate risks. So while every leader needs financial and human resources to reach his or her goals, commitment should always precede these resources. When a leader demonstrates a commitment to the mission and goals of the organization, the resources will always follow. And there's the need for external engagement. Companies that thrive with a sustainable strategy realize the importance of reaching beyond their own boundaries to a variety of external stakeholders along the value chain. Your customers, your suppliers, your distributors. They learn from the outside, and in so doing are far more likely to encourage their employees to assimilate knowledge from sources external to their organizations. Because, of course, when you work with a group of your peers from other companies, you might begin to see things from a much different light. In today's knowledge economy, people are the intellectual assets that can make things happen. Has been demonstrated by Custodian. The cost of mismanaging them can be disastrous. Leading people can be very, very difficult. It's hard work. It's full of tensions. It's full of trade-offs, celebrations, and of course, it's full of disappointments. And that is why the personal engagement of employees in any company is very crucial. Any company who wants to be sustainable must have a clear strategy for engaging employees. We live in a fast-changing world. And because of that, you need to be able to introduce and get your employees to adapt to new ways of doing things. To achieve that, you must secure their interest and attention and get them to understand and believe in the reasons for the change and also recognize what they need to contribute to it. A common cultural element that enables the process of sustainability is the change readiness of the culture. A typical organization faces a significant challenge created by the project it runs, whether they are focused on cost reduction, mergers, restructuring, or large IT implementation. The biggest difficulty is usually getting the employees to embrace the change that each project brings. Therefore, you must help them to adopt new behaviors, accept and take ownership of the new projects being introduced instead of resisting it. You must take into account the human dynamics of change for your project plan implementation to be successful. This is the realm of change management. And then there is innovation. Companies need to innovate or they'll die. Innovation is a core cultural capability for sustainable companies. It's more like a precondition for survival. To improve financial performance, sustainable companies tend to focus on innovations in processes, products, and business models. But innovation is more likely to occur in organizations where communication is enabled and people with different frames of reference can come together to share ideas. Sustainable companies tend to encourage the airing of diverse points of views. They appreciate that, and when properly handled, enterprise-wide conversations tend to create understanding across the organization. So much so that in addition to leading to synergy and innovation, these conversations also build trust. Leaders of sustainable companies understand the value that results when people within the company know that they can count on the integrity, the competency, intentions, and reliability of their leaders and co-workers. So trust grows when people perceive that they are part of a collective effort to deliver value to stakeholders in a way that contributes to the betterment of the society. Work then becomes more meaningful and people become more engaged and productive. And of course, there is corporate generosity. These days, there's a lot of skepticism about generosity as a growth and sustainable strategy. If you're one of those, then consider stinginess as a growth strategy and see if it works. The question is, does that ever work in the long run? It doesn't. The etymological root of generosity is the same as genesis, genius, and generate. Generous companies appear to be proud of what they make. So if we were to consider a survey across 44 major American universities, which suggested that that being generous protects your overall health twice as much as aspirin does against heart disease. I'm not suggesting that you should give for that reason, but isn't it nice to know that God has planned it to be good for you, not aspirin, but generosity? So it's very good for us to be generous. And it's one way to go on that path to sustainability. As the saying goes, what I spent, I lost. What I keep, I had. And what I gave, I have. In conclusion, the only moral imperative that grounds sustainability is the need to balance the short and the long-term supply and demand of resources. Securing short-term successes should never be at the risk of long-term survival. Business sustainability is the ability of firms to respond to their short-term needs without compromising the ability to meet future needs. And by focusing on the sustaining part of sustainability, businesses can build long-term relationships, innovate enduring designs, and invest in long-lasting infrastructure. Not only will this help firms survive over the long term, it will help them to thrive. May Custodian thrive. Thank you very much.